Get back, Fluffy, mash Fluffy, get back, you flea infested monk. Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Last year in the desert, had a boy called me Millie Bug and Skettle. Get back, Fluffy, mash Fluffy.
Welcome back to the Now Morning Show. We are getting ready for a conversation with Dr. Paul Crooks talking about the value of spaying and neutering your pets. A critical conversation not just for pet owners, but for everybody in the community. Good morning, Dr. Crooks, and welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for having me as usual.
It's a pleasure to have you back with us on this show. You know, Dr. Crooks, let's get one thing out of the way. Let's talk about the difference between spaying and neutering.
Yeah, so around the time of Bob Barker on The Price is Right, and people of my generation and older will remember that, he would have called at the end of every episode to have your pet spayed or neutered.
Yeah.
At the time, spaying would have been the term used for female dogs, neutering the term for male dogs, but he sort of brought that into being, where spaying and neutering prior to that just meant the removal of the gonads, so they were both used for either sex. Bob Barker is kind of the person who made it that spaying refers to female dogs and cats, and neutering refers to male dogs and cats, but now there's a lot of pet rabbits happening in Trinidad and Tobago as well. So actually, spaying is the removal of the reproductive organs of the female animal or female pet, and neutering is the removal of the reproductive organs of the male animal.
You know, Dr. Crooks, many people say with these procedures, it changes their animal's behavior and their personality. Is there any weight to this?
Yes. So we know that sex hormones influence behaviors, if for nothing else, because they cause animals to seek sex. So we have male dogs, for example, that in the community would roam, would stray, would wander to try to find females that are on heat. Sometimes they would go miles. So if you are driving around the Queen's Park Savannah or in Tobago, you're walking around in Scarborough, you will see a stray female dog, invariably, a stray female dog with about 5 males wandering behind her. So that roaming behavior, where they seek a female in heat, for example, a male dog shouldn't go if the animals are, sorry about that. If the animals are on heat, if the females are on heat, the males shouldn't do it if they're neuter. Female dogs, similarly, do seek male companionship when they're on heat. So female dogs also would go roaming and looking for females, but also there tends to be more aggression, particularly between individuals of the same sex. So you'll find females fighting females, males fighting males, and that tends to be reduced as well. Male dogs also tend to mark territory a lot more when they're intact, when they have their testicles. So they'll go around and they'll urinate everywhere. They may still do it, certainly, but definitely they'll go around and urinate more. And also, you might find behaviors in the house or in the home where they're biting furniture and so on. You might find that kind of behavior more, especially in cats, aggression in cats. And also, animals tend to be less active when they're spayed or neutered, so that animals may gain weight over time.
Now, what you've just shared there are some of the, what some would call benefits, but also some of the detriments also when it comes to the weight gain particularly. Walk us through what you would see as the main benefits now, or the main cons also, of spaying or neutering your pets.
All right, so I always talk about spaying and neutering as something that is a public health good. Now, the reason why I would say that is because when you spay or neuter your pet, you are not just protecting your own animals from reproductive harm, potentially. A female animal, for example, that is spayed before her first heat has basically a 0% chance of getting breast cancer, for example. So you are protecting your animals from reproductive harm, potentially, from difficult births, from diseases that are spread sexually. You're protecting them from that. But it's more than just the individual. look at the case now with the TTSPCA, where here in Tobago, they've been struggling to stay open. And we really hope that people, viewers out there, support the TTSPCA and what they do. Recently, there was a TTSPCA walk in Trinidad. And in both of those instances, the TTSPCA in Trinidad and Tobago have animals that need homes, that need to be cared for. These animals, strays, roaming animals, those animals need to be cared for as a society. And how do we end up with strays? We end up with strays because people have animals that are making puppies, making kittens, and they don't know how to get rid of them. Some people are tying kittens into bags and throwing them in the bin. Some people throw them into the river. Some people leave them in a box by the beach. Some people dump them by the shelter. Some people bring them by vets. And if we don't control our breeding of animals, this is what happens. Now, why are stray animals a public health hazard? It's because stray animals have caused and will continue to cause road traffic accidents. Stray animals tear up garbage, so it's an aesthetic problem. Stray animals can bite and attack humans, other animals. And I remember we spoke at the last visit, I believe, about the animal freedoms or
Yes.
freedoms to express normal behavior as one of the very important aspects of animals being given the rights that they should have. And in that instance, we had talked about within reason, because you don't want your goats and sheep going over and eating your neighbor's plants. You don't want your cats going out and killing lizards and birds. And again, where we have stray animals, that's what happens. You have a decrease in the wild animal population. Now is turtle season, and we have stray dogs killing and eating hatchlings. So these are the kinds of things that we think about on a broader scale, where stray dogs and cats not only are going to affect you, your household, your family, but are also going to affect your neighbors, your community, animals in the environment. And therefore, it is a global good to have your pet spayed or neutered if your intention is not to breed.
Now, for some, it feels heartbreaking to spay or neuter because they say, you're taking away normality, as you would have referenced with the 5 animal freedoms. But there are also some that say that it's not actually healthy for the animal to be spayed or neutered. What is the medical opinion on that?
Thank you for asking that question. That's a very good question. In the past, we would have recommended across the board, and generally that is still the recommendation. Once you don't intend to spay or neuter, it's a greater good for the animal's health, for your well-being, for your family's well-being, for community to spay or neuter. However, if you have a controlled environment where you know your dog is not going to escape, you know your dog is not going to become pregnant, yes, the animal may have risk for reproductive disease, tumors of the testicles, tumors of the breast, and so on. The animal is at risk for that. However, not only do they not gain weight as rapidly, of course, just like people, as they get older, activity level decreases, you gain more weight and so on. So that happens regardless. But not only do they gain weight more slowly, but they tend to be more active. And the growth, what we found and what data supports, is that in particularly large breed dogs, the early spaying or neutering may affect their ability to develop. So in the past, the recommendation has been to spay or neuter before 8 months, because 8 months is typically when they would come on heat for the first time. That's when they attain puberty. So the recommendation was to spay before that, so the risk of breast cancer is reduced and so on. However, for larger dogs, now it is debatable, and you should speak to your vet about whether or not you should spay the animal at that time or delay the spaying and neutering. So your Dobermans, your Rottweilers, your cane corsos, do we spay and neuter now or do we spay and neuter later? Have that discussion with your vet. If you are in an environment where the animal is not contained, then it's probably best to do it, even though the animal may not grow to its full genetic potential. So these are some of the discussions that should be had. And of course, surgery itself brings risk, because a spaying and neutering operation is not a minor thing, particularly the female surgery, because we are going into the abdominal cavity and we are going to find ovaries, we're going to find the womb and remove them. But of course, there are other organs there, The animal may bleed, the animal may get infections, and so on. So it is not something to be taken lightly. And where you can limit risk, you should.
Now, Dr. Crooks, another consideration for many pet owners is also going to be the cost that is attached to spaying and neutering. What are your comments on that?
Well, we had a discussion, I think maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, where I would have said owning a pet is a privilege, and really people should see it like that. Now, I'm not saying that that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to care for animals in the vicinity, in the neighborhood, animals that you see are suffering. You should try to help. However, the truth is that if you decide to take on the responsibility of caring for an animal, it means that comes with a burden of cost and it comes with a responsibility. I had written an article for, I believe, The Guardian once, where I tried to work out roughly how much it costs to care for an animal per year. And for a normal, healthy animal, you're looking at up to about $6,000 per year for the care of that dog. So $6,000 may not sound like a lot when it's divided up among all the months, but when you consider that some people are living month to month, paycheck to paycheck, that $6,000 burden is not something they can really afford. And therefore, if you are not able to care for an animal, perhaps you should consider delaying it. But there are low-cost spay and neuter programs available through certain reputable charitable organizations that you may consider. Certainly reach out to the TTSPCA, the Animal Welfare Network. They may be able to guide you in that regard. However, a spay or neuter, from the veterinarian standpoint, for a vet who has a clinic, who runs, pays overheads, rent, and so on, a spay and neuter might cost you between $1,500 and $2,000 as the standard price, depending on the species, depending on the facility, depending on the vet. Generally, you want to ensure that the animal is spayed or neutered as safely as possible because this is an optional surgery. So inquire from your vet about standards regarding gas anesthesia, regarding versus injectable anesthesia, regarding what other methods they take for sterility, cleanliness. These are questions that you can ask because, of course, price ranges may result in different qualities of care, all of which should be through veterinarians, registered and qualified veterinarians, should be very safe. However, it is the responsibility of the owner to verify that. If you're paying a suspiciously low price, ask yourself and ask the vet, why is the price that suspiciously low?
Yeah, Dr. Crooks, very quickly before we go, we have just shy of a minute, but would love to touch on the relationship between legislation and spaying and neutering. We do know many countries in the world do have this, and it is being enacted. What are your comments on that for Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, it is our recommendation from the Veterinary Association that animals are cared for responsibly. So again, if you have a breeding program where you know for sure your animals are contained and you are in control of the breeding, then you may go ahead. The recommendation from us, though, is if you don't have that in place, you should spay or neuter, regardless of the breed, regardless of the housing. If you have no intention to breed, it is the recommendation that you spay or neuter. However, regarding the law, we don't have any law in place regarding pet ownership in that regard. And that is something that we do want to push for in addition to permanent identification of all pets.
Well, Dr. Crooks, hopefully we can have you back on again soon to discuss that and some of the continued changes in Trinidad and Tobago when it comes to our furry friends. Have a great day. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Paul Crooks here with us this morning on the Now Morning Show discussing spaying and neutering your pets. Stay tuned, there's more coming up after the break.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? And a boy called me Millie Boggins can tell. Get back, Fluffy, mash Fluffy, get back, you flea infested monk. Who let the dogs out?
Can you count for me 1 to 10 for audio?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Can you 1 to 10 for audio?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Can you count for me 1 to 10 for audio?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Gotta count better, right? Because we want to hear you properly, so talk strong.
Right.
Count again first.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Ladies, walk on.